Dear participants, good afternoon in this very nice day in Riga with a nice sunshine. I do apologize for a little bit of starting late. We have some technical glitch, but I hope we will manage those as we go. I'm very happy to welcome all of you today in our second seminar about possibilities for Latvian entrepreneurs to promote the Ukrainian economy. And today we are going to focus on support programs and procurement. We will start our first part of the seminar and we will continue it in English, and then we will switch to Latvian. We will spend together 1.5 hours, and we will start with the opening remarks from the Embassy of Ukraine in Latvia. Then we will have a discussion with the European Bank of Reconstruction and Development representatives about procurement and projects in Ukraine. And then we will have a representative from Pozoro, which is the public procurement office in Ukraine, and we will discuss how Latvian companies can participate in tenders there and get all the relevant information about those. Then we will continue in Latvian, where we will have a representative from Altum telling us more about the export credit guarantees instrument. We will also give insight on the Latvian Chamber of Commerce and Industry projects in Ukraine and what kind of support is available there. And then we will have an experience story from Andris Puleciņš from Vincent's Polyline, who worked and still works in Ukraine, so before war and also now during the war. So I would also like to tell that if you are having some questions, there is a possibility to type it in a chat window, and I will read it to our panelists. Please give your questions during the presentation so we can have a question-answer session after each presentation. And with this, I would like to give a floor to Mr. Artem Takhtarov, who is the second secretary of the Embassy of Ukraine in Latvia and is responsible for economic affairs. Please, Artem, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Katrina. Dear colleagues, esteemed participants of the webinar, it is completely justifiable for quite a time. So we start such meetings, such webinars with gratitude words, and it is no exception. So first, I would like to express our deep gratitude to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Latvia and the esteemed Latvian Chamber of Commerce and Industry for organizing such an important event, which is dedicated to Ukraine, and my special gratitude to the esteemed Chamber for putting the issue of the support of Ukraine almost in every activity conducted by the Chamber. Only today, it is the second webinar organized by the Chamber, which facilitates economic trade relations between our countries and which offering the helping hand for Ukrainian businesses and which binding our business circle together. The commitment of Latvian businesses and business associations to the support of Ukraine facing the Russian aggression is extremely important for us, and we are ready to continue this cooperation with the Chamber of Commerce until our common victory and beyond. Today we will speak not only about support. The reconstruction process will require a lot of support from our international partners in order to mitigate devastating consequences of the Russian aggression against Ukraine. But we will also speak about mutually beneficial opportunities for Ukrainian and international businesses, and sure, we invite Latvian businesses to join in. Today's webinar is a good platform for Latvian entrepreneurs who are keen to contribute into Ukraine's economy and a recovery process through investment and other means. Ukraine is a modern and open country with vast potential for such opportunities for cooperation. And I'm thrilled to see the presentation of Prozoro system, which is a good example and a good milestone for Ukraine public procurement reform. The implementation of Prozoro streamlined our public procurement and opened new horizons for transparency and efficiency. Taking this opportunity, I would like to also thank to the international financial institutions such as EBRD for making the substantial contribution to the support of Ukraine and to the reconstruction process of Ukraine in particular, as well as for the projects and programs which make a lot easier for our foreign partners to operate in Ukraine and bring their resource and expertise for the reconstruction process of Ukraine. I am sure that the Latvian companies will be not exception, and they will be our good partners for the foreseeable future and beyond. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm looking forward to the fruitful presentations and discussions ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Takhtarov. Thank you for your kind words about our cooperation. We, as a Chamber of Commerce, looking forward in both ways how to support Latvian companies in Ukraine and Ukrainian companies here in Latvia, and how to make this economic relations only flourish. I will now move forward to the presentation by Lesya Kuzmenko. She is a deputy head of Ukraine at the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. And as I mentioned already, she will give an insight about opportunities to participate in EBRD procurement for projects in Ukraine. Please, Lesya, share your presentation and give us this very valuable information.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting for this event. In my first part, I will focus more on our general activities in Ukraine, and then my colleague Nurilya will focus on procurement activities. So let me share my presentation first. Can you see it now?
Screen and start sharing. Yes, and next slide.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Yes, it works.
So EBRD in Ukraine, since its establishment, actually, Ukraine is very important country of operation for EBRD. For the last 5 years, it's definitely one of the top 3 country recipients of EBRD support, along with Turkey and Egypt. And we are very much active in the country. And since 1991, we invested more than 19 billion euro in over 550 projects across various industries in the country. We do have significant presence in the country. Before the war, we had 4 offices with more than 100 employees. Now, I have to say that we relocated our office in Warsaw, but obviously we are eager to come back as soon as security situation allows us to do so. Along with providing financing, we're also very active in policy dialogue activities. We're working with the government in various areas, including corporate governance, green transition, digitalization, conducive business environments, and also we help to promote public administration reform in the country. And all our financing is divided between 3 areas. It's sustainable infrastructure, industry, commerce, and agribusiness, which I'm covering in the country, and investment through financial institutions, i.e. through the banks. Since the beginning of the war, already in March last year, we made a decision, our shareholders made a decision that we should stay in Ukraine and we should provide support to the country. And in fact, we were the first IFI who decided to be involved and who decided to take Ukrainian risk on its balance sheet. So we announced that we would do 3 billion euro during 2 years, 22 and 23. And now we can proudly say that we effectively achieved this number. Last year investments reached 1.7 billion euro, and already now investments in 2023 reached 1.3 billion. And I'm sure it would be more by end of the year. And since they will continue, we would like to do the same next year. I mean, 1.5 billion per year. And obviously, we would be ready to step up since reconstruction. But we always say that reconstruction starts now. So we have to start thinking about investments now. So for ourselves, we defined 5 core areas of our focus. It's trade finance, it's energy security, food security, vital infrastructure, and overall support of private sector resilience. Our focus was always on support of private sector, but obviously in Ukraine it's not only private sector, because we have quite a lot of challenges in energy area, etc. Therefore, we are doing 50-50 in terms of financing private and public sectors in the country. So as far as private sector is concerned, we have 3 main channels how we distribute our financing to private companies. First of all, most straightforward is direct bilateral financing by BRD. It is focused on more larger clients with the amounts above 10 million euro. The second one is risk-sharing facilities with commercial banks, which we work with in Ukraine. It is whereby EBRD and partner bank approve each deal on individual basis, and then commercial bank provides financing, and EBRD provides up to 60% guarantee on this loan, effectively allowing commercial banks to do more. And the third instrument, we call it portfolio risk sharing. It was developed for Ukraine, and now it is spreading to other countries as well. It's so-called portfolio risk sharing, where commercial banks, they built up their own portfolios of smaller loans. Individual size of the loans is up to 3 million euro. And EBRD provide guarantees of up to 50% on this portfolio. This is more focused on SME segment, and the demand for such kind of guarantee from EBRD is great, because the Ukrainian banks has a lot of liquidity in the country, but they without external support such as EBRD, they just cannot allow themselves to provide a lot of financing to the commercial sector. Here I would like to show several examples of our deals in industry, commerce, and agribusiness area. Last year, our financing mostly was focused on working capital support and liquidity support. We were very active in agribusiness and manufacturing and services area. Here you can see examples of our loans. Apart from financing, we also looked at equity opportunities as well. For example, in property and tourism area, we invested up to 24 million to joint venture with Dragon Capital, with focus on logistics. So the company is constructing a logistic warehouse on the ring road of Lviv. Lviv, you know, is becoming a very important logistic hub in the country. And also we invested equity into Horizon Capital Growth Fund together with other partners. I would like to see here, tell you that EBRD does not have standard products. So we are happy to work with each potential investor on individual basis. We are quite flexible, and we can structure the projects according to project needs. We can finance greenfield projects, we can finance acquisitions, and also along with financing itself, we can provide technical assistance to actually implement these projects. and to support company in various other ways, such as energy efficiency, for example, development of green agenda, sustainability audits, supply chain development, etc., etc. Now I would like to say a few words about our activities in infrastructure and energy. It's mostly in public area, but also we have private companies there as well. Here we work a lot in cooperation with other IFIs, as well as other donors such as EU, Americans, and other companies and donors. So just a few words about projects which we did in this area on sovereign level. It was liquidity support to Ukrenergo, Ukrainian Railways, and Naftogaz. Last autumn, we helped Ukrenergo when the Russian Shelling attacks started. In autumn last year, we helped them with emergency rehabilitation and capital support. And actually, we continue working with this company further in this season as well. Also, we helped Restoration Energy for road rehabilitation program. We are working on municipal level. We provided support to Lviv, Dnipro, and Khmelnytsky. And also, we are happy to provide support to private operator. Example here is container rail terminal on Ukrainian-Polish border of the country. Going forward, just a few words about future. So we will continue working on the sovereign level with Naftogaz, Ukrenergo, Ukrhydroenergo, with Road Restoration Agency. We will continue working with various municipalities such as Kharkiv, Mykolaiv, Kyiv, Ternopil, Zhytomyr, etc. And obviously, we will look at various renewable projects and any other projects which would help with energy security in the country. So I would stop here, and I will pass the floor to my colleague who will focus more on procurement area of the bank.
Thank you, Lesya. I just want to remind our participants to type your questions in chat window if you have some questions for Lesya, and after that also for Nurilya. We will then ask the questions about after both EBRD presentations. And I also want to let you know that we are recording this webinar. It will be available afterwards, not only to participants of this webinar, but also to all members of our chamber. And we will also promote this information in our social networks and web page. So this will be available to those who are interested to see once again or for the first time. And we will also share all the presentations showed today to the participants. I will now give the floor to Nurilya Moldak-Matova. She is an Associate Director, Project Implementation Advisor, Lead for Ukraine in EBRD Procurement Policy and Advisory Department. So please, Nurilya, share your screen and your presentation. Let's try, will it work? If not, we will share it from our side.
Are you able to see my screen?
I see your screen. Let's
see.
The
presentation?
Yes, I see your presentation. And next slide, probably we need to check, does it works?
Yes, yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm going to very briefly explain what the bank does in the area of procurement, working in Ukraine as well, which is applicable to all other countries of operation as well, and also how how can Latvian companies use the opportunities that are available in the bank financed projects and projects that the bank co-finances jointly with other IFIs and bilateral donors. This is a very modest statistics of participation of Latvian companies and the success of Latvian companies in the last 5 years. This, mind you, this is not only Ukraine, so you can see only 12 tenders were interesting for Latvian companies, and which resulted in 3 signed contracts, 2 of which were in Ukraine. All for good, for tenders for goods, and the total value of contracts was just over 11 million. EBRD, what does it mean? Procurement in accordance with EBRD procurement policies and rules. So the bank, when the bank starts operating started working upon its establishment in the countries of operation of the bank, there was no clear or no legislation related to procurement and how public procurement can be done. So similar to other institutions, the bank has developed its own set of policies related to procurement, and there's been several reincarnations of that policy, and the last revision took place in May last year. So you will be able to, using that presentation, you'll be able to view the policy and gather your questions, because we will be happy as a bank to arrange a separate presentation if there is a need and interest, focusing specifically on procurement and more practical and technical issues. So the procurement policies and rules, as Leslie said, the bank, as the bank invests both in private and public sector, so the procurement policies and rules of PPR focuses on regulating clients' activities in public sector. So the focus is on operations in public sector and explains what the client, being the sole responsible party for all procurement, what they can do and how they can do it and what they should not do. The bank's role in the process is to monitor and oversee that the procurement is done in accordance with the provisions of this policy. All tenders by default shall be run in EBRD finance projects shall be run in via the e-procurement portal, which the bank, as the only IFI and DB that has its own full cycle procurement portal. It's called ESEP for short, so EBRD Client E-Procurement Portal. Again, I am encouraging you to go to the website, go through the notices available from the homepage, which cover not only Ukraine, but all countries where the bank invests. And then if you're interested, you will need to register on the platform, and then you will have access to specific tenders in the countries. The bank, I should briefly mention that the bank also has a separate policy, which is EBRD corporate procurement policy, which regulates the procurement that the bank does for itself. Why it may be of interest to you? Because the bank actively procures consultancy services in specialized consultancy services with technical expertise, mainly focusing, for example, on the technical due diligence for specific project and feasibility study reports. So again, I invite you to look at the policy as well as the opportunities that the bank publishes on its website. So very briefly, what is ESEP? It's a cloud-based system. It's very, we think it's very self-explanatory, so it should be easy to use. So it's used for procurement of all types of contracts and regardless of the sources of financing in banks' projects. So this is some statistics. I'm not going to read through all of it, but focusing on statistics in Ukraine. Since more or less when the bank started to use, or the Ukrainian clients started using ESEP for procurement. So these, for example, the average participation rate, 3.1, or 3.5, it's actually a very good statistics because it's average. Sometimes we have, and very recently, our clients, large client Ukrenergo, they had 7 tenders, which is a very good level of competition in an open tender. So this means the participation in tenders is open to all to companies from all countries, regardless of the country of origin. So there are no restrictions no restrictions that are permitted by our policy. This is there are some obvious questions come to mind, taking into account the war in Ukraine, as well as the unstable situation in banks' other countries of operations, where unfortunately so the armed conflicts or disturbances lead to some introduction, some economic sanctions or restrictions on who can participate in tenders and who can win the tenders. So there, as I said, there is no restrictions for participation, but there is a new provision which we call a fire exit clause, exclusion from contract award, that is described in our policy. And if you're interested, you can read through that and see, say, if it may affect you in any way. Again, very briefly, obviously, it's not business as usual right now in Ukraine, and we need to take that into account. While the provisions of the policy are very strict based on the principles of transparency, economy, and efficiency, we do appreciate there are some risks at the moment that cannot be covered. So what we do is obviously the first step is enhanced risk assessment, still having the client's benefits in mind. What does our client need, and when do they need it? And do we need to be? Can we apply certain flexibility? So upon once completing these enhanced risk assessments, I'm not going to read through that. I'll give some statistics. So we still believe the competition is preferred, and the majority of the tenders or of all procurement done during the 2022, since the beginning of the war, was actually via open competitive tenders. And if we, like from the beginning of the war, the total value of contracts signed through tenders and some direct contracts is almost 196 million worth. So it just shows, as Leslie said, that bank and the bank's clients are still very active despite very difficult circumstances. So what does the flexibility mean in practice? So the procurement, the policy allows for the use of advanced procurement procedure, which means that our clients can announce tenders or launch pre-qualification before the signing of the legal agreement. This is still, even though the legal agreement is not signed, the bank still performs its fiduciary oversight, meaning the review of all procurement documents to ensure the compliance with their respective policies. Some flexibility on tendering times, so tender are shorter, so there are some clients agree or prefer to have more flexible tender conditions and more advantageous contract conditions given the, say, very tight delivery times that are needed for our clients, resulting in large advance payments and more, shall we say, attractive delivery terms for companies, say delivery to the border, delivery to the border warehouse, etc. Direct contracting has been used on a number of occasions since the beginning of the war, but there was probably only 5 contracts signed. The rest were signed as a result of an open tender. The possibility of financing second-hand equipment, which would never be allowed normally under normal circumstances. The board has considered that for one large project. However, unfortunately, there were no opportunities presented themselves where such second-hand equipment was offered to be acquired. But luckily for our clients, there were many companies that were willing to donate such equipment. So what can you do? As if you are a consultant, so you can act as a consultant for the bank or for the bank's clients. For the bank, as I said, normally is assessment prior to signing, during the preparation of an investment project. Technical inspections in contracts signed by our clients. Procurement support, including support during the project implementation, if possible, site supervision, etc. For the bank, also as a lender's monitor, This is still used even in these circumstances. Even though we do not request or demand that the consultants go to Ukraine because of the risks. So, but these services have still been provided. Obviously, as a supplier or contractor in banks finance projects, and to find the opportunities like that, you would need to go to ESEP and look through the procurement notices. And so what can we do? So as I'm extending once again my offer to have another event dedicated solely to procurement, so we wouldn't have to rush through the main points. And for those who would be interested and still and have questions on how to use ESEP, my colleagues in the PBAD Innovations team, they organize training for our clients, as well as the prospective users, suppliers, and contractors. So this was very brief run through of the procurement approach that the bank uses in Ukraine as well as other countries. And if you have any questions, so you will have the presentation. So there's this is the main address for our department. And as a lead for Ukraine, you can directly approach me. I would be happy to assist if I can. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nuril. It was very, very, very interesting, and I think very valuable to our participants. And it's also very, very interesting and good to know that you also provide more specific seminars and trainings on your procurement, and tell how the system works and how everyone can be part of that system. I don't see that there would be any specific questions from our participants. I hope they will approach you directly, but I wanted to ask maybe one question. So you told at the beginning that there is a possibility to register in EBRD procurement platform. So just for clarification, everyone can do that. Also me as an individual, or I need to be somehow related to any company or organization to do that?
Anyone can register, because there are instances, for example, when our clients need specialized services and not necessarily from a consulting company. It could be an individual consultant. So any legal or private legal entity or an individual can register in the system.
And then you receive all the information about ongoing procurements done by your side.
You don't need to register to access the opportunities.
Okay.
So even if you go to the ESEP platform now, the homepage, esepebrd.com, you will be able to see opportunities and notices published in all countries.
Okay.
If I have a minute, I can demonstrate very quickly. It's not going to take a lot of time.
Yes, please. Maybe
So
if you can.
yes, so we are now, so it's a cloud-based system. So if you can see my screen.
Yes,
So
I can see your screen.
so this is the address of the homepage.
Okay.
It's also the snapshots also in the presentations, and here you can see the procurement notices. Here is where you register, and here the procurement notices. So if I click on the notice on this section, it's going to be a little bit slow because I'm connected and so yes, so here the opportunities, you can use keywords maybe for on the country, or you can also on the type of for the sector, etc. And here you can see, so you can all projects for all countries. You see, there's also even Latvia, Riga Airport. So anyone interested should look into that as well. So the types of notes is also different. You can look at the standard tender documents which are published on the EBRD website. So you can also look there for kind of review the documents just to prepare yourself to be a more sort of to prepare a good quality proposal, so to speak. But all information, like a lot of additional guidance and directives are published on our website, which I should have mentioned in my presentation, and maybe I will add a slide and send the revised presentation to the organizers.
Thank you. That would be very good. While we are having this conversation between ourselves, we have a question in chat asking, in Latvia, many companies participate in the EU procedures. Could you briefly say if the EBRD rules are very different to standard EU rules when it comes to procurement?
The principles are all the same. There may be some difference in the types of procedures that are used, but there are obviously a lot of similarities. I would say one of the big differences is actually restrictions on participation, which say would apply any EU sanctions, or any decisions of that nature. Let's put it that way. They would apply to procurement in EU and would not apply to procurement in EBRD projects, but it's very similar. I would say it's not only in relation to Ukraine, but say when in a very good established and familiar legal frameworks, there is a certain flexibility or that is given that applies to procurement, for example, the negotiated procedure, which is say not envisaged by the not envisaged in very same way by our policy, but also not by the Ukrainian public procurement law, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm very glad that we'll have next the presentation on Prozoro, which is very important, and I'm super happy that it's going to be part of today's event. Maybe just a couple of words that we work closely with the Prozoro team and with the Ministry of Economy in seeing how can we continue support the evolution and development of Prozoro, but also how can we harmonize and work together with other IFIs. And the decision has been made in Marrakesh by the heads of procurement that we will gradually expand the use of Prozoro with the possible end goal. We don't know when it's going to happen, but the end goal is for during the reconstruction efforts in Ukraine, there will be wider use of Prozoro, and eventually Prozoro as probably the sole system to be used in MDB finance projects.
Okay, thank you. We have another question from Inga Ford. She will ask that question herself. Please, Inga, open your microphone.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me well?
You very well, please.
Thank you. I would like to thank EBRD representatives for both presentations. They are very insightful and useful. And actually, one of my questions was just answered by Narilia regarding the Prozoro and harmonization with other IFIs procurement procedures. This is very good to know, and we look forward to the updates. But my question relates to some more practical terms regarding the procurement. For instance, what would you say would be the average time frame for submitting request for procurement until this is reviewed and either approved or not approved if the company wants to participate in procurement? And maybe a little bit if you or Lesia could comment regarding specifically projects in Ukraine. We see that in this procurement system, the active projects or ongoing projects are quite a large scale infrastructure projects, but whether these include also some smaller elements or like small repairs or small deliveries of goods or something that would be more relatable to our companies to participate, as the scale could be much smaller than the whole project. Maybe you could comment a little bit on that. What are the opportunities for companies to participate? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your questions, Inga. I think it only highlights that there will be a need for another more technical presentation where we can focus on very practical and technical issues. I don't want to take a lot of time. All I can say is that the banks recommended the duration of an open tender of one stage or single stage would be 40 days. But obviously, under the circumstances, it all depends on what our clients are buying. And it can be shorter, it can be longer. So it's very difficult to answer to give one number because it really depends on what we're buying. In terms of larger projects versus smaller projects, we see ESEB is well suited, is probably at the moment best suited for procurement of high complexity, high value contracts. And this is where we are working with the Ministry of Economy and the Prozoro team very closely, because our policy allows the use, the carrying out procurement in accordance with the national laws and using national e-procurement portals like Prozoro. And there are, at the moment, there are thresholds of 150 or 140,000 euro equivalent for goods and 5.5 million euro equivalent for works, I believe. So obviously for such smaller contracts, using ESAP and all documentation in English in this may not be practical. So that's why I welcome the next presentation, and I would also encourage Latvian companies to familiarize themselves with Prozoro, register in Prozoro, and be active not only in IFI finance contracts like EBRD projects, but also in Ukraine's public procurement, which does not limit beyond obvious participation of foreign companies.
Thank you, Nurilya. I think you are very right about the Prozoro presentation and familiarizing with them, our Latvian companies. So I would like now give floor to Lilia Kuljuk, if I pronounce your name and surname correctly, and if I'm not, I'm deeply apologize for that. So please.
Yes.
Share your screen. I suppose you have a presentation.
Yes, I have a presentation. My name is, as you said, my name is Lilia Kulik. I am a product manager in a state enterprise Prozoro. And now I'll show you something about our system. First of all, I would say that our Prozoro system is a two-level system. What does it mean? There are an administrator as a state enterprise Prozoro, and also we administrate the central database and a module of auctions, and all buyers and suppliers, they for example, announce their purchases and submit their offers through commercial marketplaces. And also, I would say that now we have 12 commercial electronic marketplaces, and all participants, all procurement entities, they organize public procurement through them and submit their offers. Also, this approach has many advantages, as we think, because it's a really transparent system, and also customers and participants, they have really good services, because it's commercial platforms. They are interested to they have they are competitors, and they want to do all the best for their clients, because if they don't do it, a client can change a marketplace. So what about our system? How is done? Okay, for example, you are a customer, so you want to announce your purchase. You go to the marketplace, because all our electronic cabinets, they are on the marketplaces, and you announce your purchase. This information about your purchase goes to the central database and also return to all other marketplaces. So in all marketplaces and in central in website Prozorgo.ua, we have the same information. Also, if you are a participant, you can submit your proposal, and it's not important in which marketplace you do it, because information is the same. So you submit your proposal, then information about this proposal goes to the central database, and you can see it on web portal Prozorgo.ua, and then it returns to all other marketplaces. So we have the same information in all these marketplaces and Prozorgo.ua. Also, what about participation in our procurements? So, first of all, if you want to be a participant, you should register on one of the authorized marketplaces as a supplier. It's really easy. There are different ways how you can register. For example, you can sign a contract. You can do it by bank ID and other ways. Then you can find a tender. You can do it also on Prozorgo.ua or on the marketplace. Also, you can, when you register on your marketplace, you can say that I'm working in this area, and your marketplace will send you all interesting tenders from your area. Then you apply for participation. You also do it through marketplace. You have to submit your proposal. In our system, there are many, for example, electronic fields, and also you as a participant can add some documents. Also, I will say that because of we have many electronic fields, then our procurements are really analyzable. Yeah, you can analyze everything in our system. Then you offer your best price. You can do it, for example, on the auction, but also now we have a possibility to switch off auction. For example, if a customer don't want to use auction on his procedure, he can switch off auction, and then of course you will win if your proposal will be the best and all documents will be okay. What about key numbers? Before full-scale war, we had more than 400,000 competitive tenders. We really have many competitive tenders, and also then through the competitive tenders, Ukrainian customers spent 794 billions of hryvnias, and also we had 65,000 suppliers in our system, but it is the number of suppliers that submitted offers in 2021. Yeah, in our system we have more than 137,000 suppliers, and also we have money saved by our customers. It was 46 billions of hryvnias. What about our participants? Yeah, our bidders, because for example, we have some statistic about it. We know that, for example, 42% of our participants, it's medium enterprises. And for example, 28% it's small enterprise, and 27 it's micro enterprise. So if you just not a big enterprise, you also can be a participant of our tenders, because we have many like not big but competitive tenders. And also and here you can see that only 1% is big enterprises of our participants, but for example, if we speak about money, you can see that 24% it's a big enterprise when you look at amounts of contracts, but also to 49% is medium enterprises. What about our system during full-scale war? After the beginning of full-scale war, our government have done a resolution that allowed not to do competitive procedures. Then all our customers, we have known that it's really difficult. It was really difficult situation for all our customers, for our participants, and then they could just sign the contract and then just to report about this contract in our system. But in June 2022, soon after the liberation of Kyiv region, the obligation to use Prozoro was partly returned, but it wasn't like all our procurements according to our law. It was just like we call it simplified procedure. But after that, but now, we have just I think more than 80% of competitive procedures, but it's 80% when we 80%. But also, you know that our system didn't stop to function during the war, and we always try to help our customers, our participants, and what about figures? For example, in 2022, it was really difficult year. But for example, we had in that year 160,000 number of competitive procurements. It's really good result. Of course, if you can see that all our procurements, an amount of all our procurements was more than 2 million, but it's also good result. Okay, and if we speak about some of conducted contracts, half of all this sum was conducted by contracts was conducted by the result of competitive procurements. So now we have really really big amount of competitive procurements again, and it's really good use. What about our top categories? For example, the main categories in our system is food products, it's fuel, it's medical equipment, it's also construction works, and agriculture products. So if you can Okay, you can find a tender, a procurement in our system of all these things. And what about the situation now? Also, as Nurullah said about it, in this year, 2023, we have done some functionality according to the assessment of World Bank, and now we have a possibility in our system to not we have, but our customers have a possibility in our system to do procedures according to I don't know, maybe rules of different banks or other financial organizations. For example, we have done it's like a constructor. You can configure your procedure when you announce it. For example, as I said before, you can switch off or switch on auction. You can say that you will your evaluation will be in 2 steps. For example, you will use 2 envelope system, or maybe all documents of the participants will be opened together. At the same time, also you can say how many, what is the minimal, what is the minimal participants you need. For example, if you can say also that according to your rules, you should have more than 2 participants or more than 3 participants, and if it will not be 2 or 3, the system will your tender will be unsuccessful. And also we have multi-currency, a possibility of submit your bid in another currency than a currency of the tender. Also we have other different features, for example, that can help you to configure your procedure. And maybe that's all. Thank you for your attention. Maybe you have questions.
Yes, thank you, Lily. Thank you very much. I have just maybe a remark that the things you are telling about the transparency system and how the system works now, I think it's very understandable for Latvian companies, because that's very similar to the one we have here, the electronic one. And I wanted to ask just a proactive question. Do you know, is there any companies from Latvia who had applied for some tenders in Ukraine so far?
I think yes, but I can watch. I can find this, and also I will send you later, because also, as I said, we have many electronic fields. Also we have a BI system, so we can analyze everything, and I will send you later. I think yes, I have seen it.
Thank you, Lila. That would be great. Good to know, and also maybe then talk with them about their experience in our next seminars, because I hear that we will need some more seminars on specifics, how the procurement process is done on a technical level on EBDR side, and probably also on your side. I don't see any questions in chat window. But I hope you will share your contact details with us in your presentation, and then we will share those with our participants. And then I hope there will be a lot of following questions, as we know most of them comes to mind afterwards. Thank you, Lily, for your participation. I want to say thank you to all our international guests, because we will switch to Latvian for our second part of this webinar. We will have there Aivis Dembovskis from Altum, Līga Sičeva from Latvian Chamber of Commerce, and Andris Plociņš from Vincents Polyline. Thank you once again. Un es šobrīd tiešām gribu dot vārdu Aivim Dembovskim no Altum, kurš ir eksporta kredītu garantiju eksperts, par to atbalstu, kādu tad var saņemt Latvijas eksportētāji sadarbībai ar Ukrainu. Lūdzu, Aivi.
Tā, labdien!
Labdien!
Vai prezentācija ir redzama?
Jā, jūs varat redzēt, jūs varat dzirdēt, un prezentācija ir ļoti labi redzama, lūdzu.
Ok, super. Jā, vispirms jau paldies par iespēju būt šeit, šajā seminārā. Manuprāt, tas ir ļoti būtiski un interesanti. Mans vārds ir Aivis Dembovskis, pārstāvu attīstības un finanšu institūciju Altum. Un šodien gribētu izstāstīt par vienu instrumentu, kas ir paredzēts ar kuru paredzēts atbalstīt sadarbību ar Ukrainu. Tās ir eksporta kredīta garantijas. Tās dod iespēju nodrošināties pret pircēju nemaksāšanu vai maksātnespējas problēmām, un tāpat laikā turpinot sadarboties ar atlikto maksājumu. Šobrīd tirgu ir piedāvājumi kredītu risku apdrošināšana arī no privātiem apdrošinātājiem. Ir tādi lieli apdrošinātāji kā Euler Hermes, Tradius, Kofas, taču tas, ko es šodien gribu pastāstīt, ir par to, kāda ir starpība starp Altum piedāvāto produktu un viņu pakalpojumiem piedāvātiem. Svarīgākā atšķirība ir tas, ka privāti apdrošinātāji pamatā piedāvā portfeļu apdrošināšanu. Viņi grib ņemt visu jūsu debitoru portfeli un apdrošināt visu apgrozījumu. Savukārt Altums piedāvā apdrošināt arī individuālos riskus. Respektīvi ir viens pircējs, ar kuru jums ir sadarbība, un viņu mēs varam arī apdrošināt. Privāti apdrošinātāji pamatā strādā ar iekšējo tirgu un ar attīstītajām valstīm. Savukārt Altums piedāvā garantijas gan uz attīstītajām valstīm, gan uz trešajām valstīm. Uz attīstītajām valstīm ar nākamo gadu gan būs ierobežojums, un mēs varēsim atbalstīt tikai tādus eksportētājus, kuru eksporta apjoms iepriekšējā gadā nepārsniedz 5 miljonus. Bet uz trešajām valstīm šādu ierobežojumu mums nav. Un arī, ko Altums nepiedāvā, mēs neapdrošinām darījumus iekšējā tirgu. Tāpat arī Ukraina, privāti apdrošinātāji neuzņemās šādu risku apdrošināt darījumus Ukrainā. Savukārt Altums to dara, un mēs drošinām darījumus arī Ukrainā. Protams, mēs vērtējam uzņēmuma finansiālo stāvokli un vispār uzņēmēju darbību. Mēs saprotam, kas ar viņu notiek, vai viņš ir spējīgs uzņemties arī kaut kādas saistības un norēķināties pēc tam. Līdz ar to arī prēmiju likmes ir atšķirīgas. Ja privātiem šīs prēmiju likmes svārstās no 0,2 līdz 1%, tad mums viņas ir sākot no 0,7 līdz pat 3,4%. Šī prēmijas likme atkarīga ir no vairākiem faktoriem. Tas ir valsts risks, tas ir konkrētais uzņēmums, cik viņš ir nopietns un spējīgs. Un, protams, arī atlikto dienu skaits, jo garāks ir atliktā maksājuma termiņš, jo tā prēmijas likme būs lielāka. Maksimālie limiti privātiem apdrošinātājiem nav vispār. Mums ir 2 miljoni eiro uz vienu pircēju. Atliktā maksājuma termiņš privātiem apdrošinātājiem garie termiņi nepatīk. Tas, ko es esmu lielākais redzējis, ir 180 dienas. Savukārt Altums var sniegt šo garantiju pat atliktiem maksājumam līdz 2 gadiem. Un pircēja riska izvērtēšana privātiem svārstās no 30 līdz 90 eiro. Mums viņi ir 90 eiro par katru pircēju. Bieži vien, pēcapmaksa ir viens no veidiem, kā piesaistīt klientus, kā kļūt konkurētspējīgākam. Ja ir līdzīgs produkts, līdzīga cena, tad šī ir vēl viena lieta, ar ko būt konkurētspējīgam, piedāvāt labākas apmaksas nosacījumus. Bet, diemžēl, latvieši vai Latvijas eksportētāji bieži vien šos riskus uzņemās uz sevi, jo pēc statistikas tikai 5% Latvijas uzņēmumu izmanto kredītrisku apdrošināšanu. Pretī attīstītajās valstīs tā ir puse no eksportētājiem, kuri apdrošina savus riskus. Bieži vien ir dzirdēts uzskats, ka man jau ir ilgtermiņa sadarbības partneris, es ar viņu strādāju jau daudzus gadus, un man nav nekāda problēma un arī nebūs. Taču statistika rāda, ka puse no visiem bezcerīgiem parādiem, kurus uzņēmums noraksta no savas bilances, nāk tieši no ilgtermiņa sadarbības partneriem. Arī šobrīd arvien biežāk es dzirdu šo informāciju, ka kāpēc es neapdrošināju, man zvana, ko man tagad darīt. Man 10 gadus bija sadarbojies, viss kārtībā, bet šobrīd tā ekonomika ir sarežģīta un grūti prognozēt ir kaut kādas izmaiņas un cik ātri viņas var iestāties. Līdz ar to, es aicinu visus izvērtēt savus esošos sadarbības partnerus. Kas ir ļoti svarīgi, tad eksporta kredīta garantija darbojās arī kā nodrošinājums finansējuma piesaistē. Respektīvi, mēs sadarbojamies ar komercbankām un citiem finansējuma sniedzējiem, privātajiem, kur mūsu garantija kalpo kā nodrošinājums. Jūs ņemat faktoringa pakalpojumu, un viņiem nav iespēja viņu apdrošināt savu privātiem apdrošinātājiem, tad ir iespējams arī slēgt trīspusējus līgumus, kur mūsu garantija kalpo kā nodrošinājums tieši faktoringam. Un, protams, arī citiem finansējuma veidiem. Par Ukrainu nedaudz. Kopš kara sākuma mums jau ir iesniegti 4 paziņojumi par maksājumu kavējumiem. Tās kavējuma summas ir ļoti atšķirīgas, sākot no 8,000 līdz pat 300,000. Un uz šo dienu Altum ir izmaksājis kompensācijās jau vairāk kā 260,000 eiro. Līdz ar ko piesardzība noteikti atmaksājās. Nedaudz par nosacījumiem. Tātad pēcapmaksa, kā jau es minēju, ir maksimums līdz 2 gadiem. Altums sēdz 90% no darījuma, līdz ar ko, kā jebkurā apdrošināšanā jārēķinās arī ar kaut kādu savu veidu pašrisku. Atlīdzība vienam pircējam līdz 2 miljoni, un nav nekādu nozaru ierobežojumu un atbalstam apdrošinam gan komerciālos riskus, gan politiskos riskus. Kur pieteikties? Šobrīd pieteikšanās visa notiek online. Mūsu mājaslapā mansaltum.lv sākotnējā reģistrācija jāveic uzņēmuma amatpersonai. Tur tiek aizpildīta klienta anketa, kā jau jebkurā finanšu iestādē, informācija par uzņēmuma īpašniekiem, patiesā labumu guvējiem. Un nākamais solis jau ir pieteikums eksporta kredīta garantijai, kur jau uzņēmums konkrēti norāda savu potenciālo sadarbības partneri vai esošo, norāda viņa reģistrācijas datus, vēlamos apmaksas nosacījumus, respektīvi, uz cik dienām ir plānots dot atlikto maksājumu. Un tad mēs izrakstam rēķinu par tiem 90 eiro un izvērtējam konkrēto pircēju. Saprotam, kas lācītim vēderā, saprotam maksātspēju, un tad orientējoši nedēļas pusotras laikā mēs varam dot ziņu, vai mēs esam gatavi šādus darījumus apdrošināt vai nesam. Ja esam, tad mēs pasakam, cik tas maksā. Tā vidējā prēmijas likme šobrīd ir ap 1% no darījumu. Ja eksportētājs piekrīt, tad tiek slēgts līgums uz gadu. Un katru mēnesi uzņēmums var deklarēt piegādes. Tātad šomēnes aizsūtīja 10 000, izrakstam rēķinu 1% no 10 000, un uzņēmumam ir prāts mierīgs, jo darījums ir apdrošināts. Tāpat, jā, kā es arī minēju, varbūt arī trīspusējie līgumi, kur Altums ir kā garantijas sniedzējs, eksportētājs ir kā eksportētājs, un faktoringa kompānija, piemēram, ir tad garantijas saņēmējs, pēc cik viņi finansē. Jā, vēl viena lieta, par ko es varbūt gribēju izmantot iespēju pastāstīt par, kas šobrīd ir ļoti aktuāli, ir krāpnieciskie gadījumi, kad uzrodās uzņēmums, respektīvi pārstāvis, kas saka, es pārstāvu lielu uzņēmumu, pamatā tas ir gan attīstītajās valstīs, un piedāvā pirkt produkciju no Latvijas bieži vien arī maziem uzņēmējiem, un finālā izrādās, ka tas vispār nav tas uzņēmums, par kuru viņš sevi uzdod. Tā kā to mēs aicinām pie šādām iespējām vienmēr pārliecināties, jo ja iepriekš bija gadījumi, kad uz šīm viltībām krita iekšā tikai mazie uzņēmēji, tad šobrīd jau mēs esam saskārušies, kad arī lielie uzņēmēji ir paglābušies bieži vien, bet arī viņi iekrīt uz šiem krāpniekiem. Tātad Altums palīdz eksportētājiem būt konkurētspējīgākiem un augt. Mana kontakta informācija ir jums pieejama un labprāt atbildētu uz jūsu jautājumiem.
Paldies, Aivi. Ļoti, ļoti interesanti un ļoti vērtīgi. Man pašai bija ļoti interesanti uzzināt, ka jūs veicat šo izpēti par klientu ārvalstīs, pirms piekrītat sniegt garantiju, ko es pilnīgi pārliecināta, ne visi uzņēmumi dara par saviem potenciālajiem vai pat esošajiem darījumu partneriem. Mums arī bija tāda brokastu saruna ar eksportētājiem, un tas, ko jūs iezīmējāt par to, ka patiesībā lielākā problēma dažreiz rodas tieši no ilgtermiņa sadarbības partneriem, tā tiešām ir. Un tas veidojas tieši no tā, ka šos partnerus vienā brīdī vairs nepārbauda. Veidojas tāda ļoti liela veidojas šī uzticības saite. Šos partnerus vairs ārvalstīs tik skrupulozi nepārbauda, nesako līdzi viņu maksātspējai, un tas, protams, rada tos riskus. Es neredzu šobrīd tērzētavā nevienu jautājumu, bet es esmu pārliecināta, ka jautājumi varētu rasties, un paldies, ka dalāties arī ar saviem kontaktiem. Jūsu prezentāciju sūtīsim, un tad es domāju, ka mums noteikti jāorganizē vēl kāda saruna tieši par riskiem ārējos tirgos un to, kā Altums var Latvijas komersantiem, eksportētājiem, arī investoriem palīdzēt šos riskus mazināt. Paldies, Aivi. Es tagad došu vārdu savai kolēģei LTRK Eiropas Savienības projektu daļas direktorai Līgai Sičevai izstāstīt nedaudz, ko mēs kā LTRK darām sadarbībā ar Ukrainu, atbalstot gan Ukrainas uzņēmēju intereses un iespējas šeit Latvijā, gan arī Latvijas uzņēmumu intereses un iespējas Ukrainā. Lūdzu, Līga, tev ir 10 minūtes.
Paldies! Jā, tiešām es ļoti īsi iezīmēšu to, ko Latvijas Tirdzniecības Rūpniecības kamera dara, vēl neskatoties uz tām papildus aktivitātēm, ko ļoti daudz jau mēs iesaistamies Ukrainas jautājumos. Mums ir 2 projekti. Viens projekts, kas tiek finansēts no Latvijas Republikas ārlietu ministrijas puses, kur nosaukums Latvijā 2, un faktiski projekta mērķis ir sniegt atbalstu Ukrainas organizācijām, gan uzņēmumiem, gan biznesa atbalsta organizācijām integrēties Eiropas Savienības tirgū. Šis ir projekts, kur mēs ļoti periodiski uzaicinām Latvijas uzņēmumus un organizācijas arī iesaistīties, kas būtu gatavi gan sniegt mācību vizītes, kad ir ienākošās grupas no Ukrainas, gan arī piedalīties B2B tikšanās reizēs ar Ukrainas uzņēmumiem, jo tiešām šis projekts mēģina grib palīdzēt Ukrainas uzņēmumiem integrēties un saprast, kas ir tās biznesa vides atšķirības, biznesa kultūras atšķirības starp Ukrainu un Eiropas Savienību. Un faktiski Latvija šajā brīdī ir viens no tādiem, kā saka, starta punktiem. Ja? Šeit mums ir diezgan praktiskas 3 galvenās aktivitātes. Tātad mēs organizējam 7 webinārus. 4 no tiem ir fokusēti uz maziem vidējiem uzņēmumiem, kur mēs stāstījām gan par digitalizācijas rīkiem eksporta attīstībai uz Eiropas Savienību, gan arī par nozarēm specifiskas lietas, kas ir nepieciešamas eksportam, ja, kas tur certifikācijas un PVD prasības un tam līdzīgas lietas. Gan arī, protams, sniedzam biznesa atbalstu organizācijām Ukrainā, jo arī šodien daudz arī tika minēts, ka diezgan liels apjomīgs Eiropas fonda finansējums būs pieejams Ukrainas organizācijām, bet tie riski tieši šajās prasmēs un izpratnē, kādā veidā strādāt ar, piemēram, startautiskiem projektiem, ar Eiropas fondu projektiem, ar atskaišu sistēmām un tā tālāk. Un tas ir tas, ko mēs organizējam un arī no savas pieredzes sniedzam šādu veidu apmācības tieši Ukrainas biznesa atbalsta organizācijām. Un tad mums ir mācību vizītes. Mācību vizītes mums viena bija šī gada septembrī. Tur bija pārtiks un mēbeļu ražotāju uzņēmumu no Ukrainas. Parasti nākamā mācību vizīte ir tekstilu nozares uzņēmumiem, kas norisināsies jau nākamnedēļ. Tā kā, ja mums auditorijā ir kāds no tekstilu nozares uzņēmumiem, kuriem būtu vēlme dalīties ar pieredzi vai tikties ar kādu no Ukrainas nozares tekstila ražotājiem, izplatītājiem, tad droši uzrunājiet mūs, un mēs jūs noteikti integrēsim programmā. Mums būs iespēja ar Ukrainas uzņēmumiem tikties. Un nākamā mācību vizīte tiek plānota nākamā gada aprīlī. Un tad, attiecīgi, arī mēs noteikti aicināsim Latvijas uzņēmumus gan uz šīm B2B tikšanām, gan arī laipni uzņemt Ukrainas delegāciju pie sevis uzņēmumā, lai dalītos ar savu labo praksi un savu stāstu tīri, kā notiek šī biznesa vide Eiropas Savienībā. Projekta ilgums sākās šī gada maijā un noslēgsies viņš nākamā gada rudenī. Tad ir otrs projekts, faktiski, kas ir arī mans pašlaik noslēdzošais slaids. Mums ir vēl viens projekts Prosper BSR, kur finansē Interreg Baltijas jūras reģiona programma. Šis ir 24 mēnešu projekts, kurš apvieno Latviju, Lietuvu, Poliju un arī Vāciju ar mērķi kopīgi rast tādu izveidot sadarbības tīklu starp organizācijām, lai mēs palīdzētu Ukrainas bēgļiem integrēties biznesa vidē un darba tirgu. Un šī projekta ietvaros notiek gan organizācija darbinieku apmācības par dažādiem pakalpojumu risinājumiem, formātiem, kā mēs varam palīdzēt šiem te Ukrainas iedzīvotājiem integrēties mūsu valstīs, gan arī tiek izstrādāta aplikācija, kurā attiecīgi Ukrainas iedzīvotāji, kas ir nonākuši mūsu valstī, varēs atrast informāciju, kādā veidā dibināt uzņēmumu, piemēram, šeit Latvijā, kādā veidā, kur labāk viņiem griezties, lai viņš atrastu savu jauno iespējams darba vietu Latvijā, un arī Lietuvā, Polijā un Vācijā. Un attiecīgi tad jā, mums arī būs, uzrunāsim arī Latvijā organizācijas, kas ir gatavas, kā saka, būt šajā te sadarbības tīklā un arī uzņēmumus. Līdz ar to, ja arī šeit, kā atkal minēju, šajā auditorijā vēl ir kāds interesants, tad droši varat rakstīt mums un skatīsimies un mēģināsim atrast tos punktus, kur mēs varam kopīgi sadarboties, lai Ukrainas iedzīvotājiem veiksmīgāk palīdzētu integrēties mūsu darbu un biznesa vidē. Nu, lūk, un pēc būtības tas arī ir. Paldies par jūsu uzmanību. Šie ir tādi mūsu 2 aktīvie projekti, kas palīdz tieši Ukrainas organizācijām, uzņēmējiem un iedzīvotājiem integrēties gan Eiropas Savienībā, gan arī darbu un biznesa vidē. Paralēli tam visam mēs, protams, arī turpinām meklēt iespējas vēl radīt jaunus projektus un noteikti vienmēr arī laipni aicinām uzaicināt gan mūsu biedrus, gan sadarbības partnerus piedalīties šajās aktivitātēs un atbalstīt šos projektus ar tādā veidā atbalstot Ukrainu. Paldies par uzmanību!
Paldies, Līgai. Līga, es ceru, ka tu pievienos savai prezentācijai arī slaidu ar savu kontaktinformāciju.
Jā.
Jā, lai mūsu dalībnieki var pēc tam, un ne tikai dalībnieki, kas ir šeit šodien, bet pēc tam skatīsies arī ierakstā, var ar tevi nonākt kontaktā un tevi atrast. Un, ja viņiem ir interese par šiem projektiem, par kuriem tu minēji, vai kādas nākotnes iespējas.
E-pasts ir pirmajā slaidā.
Nu re, ļoti
Jā.
labi. Brīnišķīgi. Paldies, Līgai. Man liekas, ka tagad mēs nokļūstam tajā savā visinteresantākajā sadaļā, kurā LTRK biedrs Andris Plociņš no Vincent Poliline padalīsies, kā tad šobrīd iet Ukrainā un kāda ir viņa pieredze un salīdzinājums gan uzņēmēju darbību pirms kara sākuma, gan arī tagad, kad karš ir teiksim, full scale, pilnās burās. Andri, lūdzu.
Jā, labdien. Es pārstāvu Vincent Poliline. Mēs ražojam celtniecības materiālus un līdz ar to praktiski visi 80% materiālu mums iet cauri mazumtirdzniecības tīkliem. Un mums ir tā kā pieredze ar mazumtirdzniecību, tad mēs apmēram varētu iezīmēt, ja kādam interesē tieši tāda pieredze, jo Ukrainā mēs esam no 16. gada, un šajā laikā dabīgi ir izmainījusies pati Ukraina un arī dzīve apkārt mums ir. Ja tā sāk no sākuma, man te palūdza, lai kaut izstāsta to mūsu pieredzi, mēs sākām klasiski ar izstādēm, tas ir 16. gadā, un kāpēc vispār uz Ukrainu mēs gājām, tas ir, jo 14. gadā, kad bija Maidans, bija skaidrs, ka Ukraina pagriezīsies uz Eiropas pusi. Un tas nozīmē, ka visi līgumi attiecības būs daudz labāks nekā strādājot ar Krieviju, jo mēs strādājām arī pirms kara ar Krieviju. Un līdz ar to tas bija tāds pagrieziena moments, kad sapratām, ka jāiet uz Ukrainu. Ar izstādēm mēs izmantojām LIA atbalstu un praktiski ar tām izstādēm mēs tuvāk iepazinām to visu, var teikt, Ukrainas tirgu. Kaut tā vienkārši runājot, izstādēs mēs neieguvām nevienu klientu tieši, bet esot izstādēs vairākus gadus, pēc tam strādājot jau ar lieliem tirdzniecības tīkliem, vienkārši bija informācija, ka mūs tur pamanīja un sāka sekot mūsu darbībām. Līdz ar to tās izstādes reāli palīdzēja, teiksim, darbība tālāk. Kā mēs atradām tos vairumtirgotājus? Tas, var teikt, ir individuāls darbs, vairāk ir personiskais darbs, kas jau, kā jau visiem uzņēmumiem, tas var paveikties, var nepaveikties. Bet, ja ejam tālāk, jā, mēs jau pirms kara mēs bijām noslēguši jau ar 5 tīkliem, tas ir kaut 130 veikali. Karam sākoties tagad ir palikuši 100 veikali, kurus mēs apkalpojam. Tā kā pieredze ir. Un kur ir problēmas varbūt? Labi, bet pie problēmām es mazliet vēlāk. Gribu pateikt tām kompānijām, kas varbūt grib iet Ukrainā un domā iet vai neiet šī brīdī. Es teiktu, ka ir jāiet, ir pēdējais mirklis iet, jo mēs redzam, kaut arī atgriežoties pagājušo ziemu, kas Ukrainai bija ļoti smaga, Polijas, Vācijas kompānijas neguļ un ļoti spēcīgi iet iekšā Ukrainas tirgū. Riskē, jā, risks paliek, bet mēs redzam, ka konkurence palielinās. Un tās kompānijas, kas ir domā darīt vai nedarīt, ir laiks to darīt. Tas ir jāizmanto viss, kas ir iespējams. No mūsu pieredzes noteikti, ja jūs domājat, tad ir jāmeklē savs darbinieks tādā pusē, jo bez sava darbinieka ļoti grūti to kaut ko paveikt. Mēs izvēlējāmies pašnodarbināts. Kā cilvēks vienkārši strādā uz sevi, noslēdzot dubultās nodokļu neaplikšanas līgumu ar vidi, ar abām pusēm valsts. Viss strādā, tur nav problēmas. Ko es varu ieteikt šobrīd, ja meklējat darbiniekus, skatieties uz sievietēm, tāpēc, ka notiek karš. Vīrieši vai nu var paņemt, atsūtīt pavēsti, vai arī ir gadījumi, ka vienkārši viņi baidās izbraukt ārpus savu reģionu. Tas ir reāli. Tā kā par to ir jādomā, kāda ir tāda tagad dzīve. Ja runājot par darbiniekiem, dabīgi ir jābūt gataviem, ka, ja jums ir tur darbinieks, elastīgāks darba laiks, ceļšķi pagājušajā ziemā, kad notika uzlidojumi, mēs nevarējām no rīta taisīt nekādas sapulces, jo no 2 līdz 5, 6 rītā ir uzlidojums, cilvēki neguļ, viņi iet gulēt 7 vai 6, jā, un pēc tam viņi ceļās 11, darbs sākās 12 reāli pa dienu, un tā tas arī bija. Redzēs, kā būs šodien. Tā ir realitāte, ir jābūt gataviem visādiem netradicionāliem veidiem, kā piemēram darba aizsardzība, cilvēks, kā mēs esam pieraduši darba aizsardzībai, cilvēkiem nopirkt kādas tur drēbes vai ko, ka tev darbinieks lai jūs nopērkat viņam bruņuvestu. Tas ir reāli, sevišķi kā mūsu gadījumā, kad cilvēkam jābrauc uz austrumu pusi, apmeklējot veikals, kuros tiešām notiek arī apšaudas tajā pašā mirklī. Ja runājot par garantijām, jā, mums pirms kara bija tieši tās garantijas Altuma, ko Altums tikko prezentēja. Man bija liels pārsteigums, ka Altums joprojām ir tās garantijas, jo ar mums līgums beidzās, kad karš sākās, un viņi neko nav paziņojuši, ka viņš turpinās. Tas bija tagad šī brīdī, tas bija man liels pārsteigums, ka Altuma garantijas turpinās. Līdz ar to mēs noteikti vērsīsimies pie viņiem šobrīd, jo mēs tagad strādājam tāpat bez visādām garantijām, ar pašu savu risku, un praktiski mēs riskējam. Jā, karam sākoties, mēs Ukrainu pilnīgi atbalstījām tādā, ka pat 2 mēnešus pēc kara sākuma mēs sūtījām savas preces, lai tikai vienkārši atbalstītu. Pat doma bija tāda, ka mēs varam nesaņemt naudu, bet mēs vienkārši atbalstījām tos mūsu partners, ar ko mums ir sadarbība, un pat nedomājām par samaksu, bet paldies Dievam, viss notiekās, un partneri ir godīgi un maksā kā, ka viss kā pienākās. Tā kā tāds darbs es jau neko jaunu nepateikšu, ka ir ļoti svarīgi atrast sadarbības partneris, kuriem var uzticēties. To jau vienmēr visi saka, bet izdarīt to grūti, bet pagaidām mums tas ir izdevies, jo mēs strādājam ar pēcapmaksu, un nekad nav bijuši gadiem, ka kāds arī nesamaksāt. Mums ir 2 vairumtirgotāji tagad. Viens ir Kijevas pusē, viens ir Lvovas pusē, un tā mēs mēģinām strādāt. Jā, mūsu preces ir lielākā tirdzniecības tīklā. Ukrainas tas ir epicentrs, tāds būvniecības tīkls, tas varbūt līdzinās kā depos, un tikai daudz reizes lielāks. Darbs ar viņiem praktiski, kā jau vienmēr ar vairumtirgotājiem. Tas ne vairumtirgotājiem, bet ar veikalu tīkliem nav viegls, bet ja tu esi noslēdz līgumu, tad praktiski viss notiek pēc līguma. Nav nekādas aizķeršanās. Naudas pārskaitījumi no Ukrainas uz Latviju notiek ļoti raiti. 1 diena, 2 dienas, tas ir maksimums, nav problēmas. Ja kāds vēlās aizbraukt, un tas ir noteikti jābrauc uz vietas uz turieni, tad transports starp Ukrainu un Latviju praktiski ļoti lats. Tas ir ar autobusu. Ar autobusu vienīgi ir jābūt gataviem, ka būs jābrauc 30 stundas. Tāds ir, jā, bet dienā iet pat 2 autobusi. Tā kā praktiski aizbraukt nav problēmas. Un to Ukraiņi ļoti novērtē, ja jūs braucat uz turieni, tad, kad citas kompānijas tikai mēģina attālināt. Aizbraucot uz turieni, es biju aizbraucis tieši ziemā, kad bija vissmagāk, tas bija faktiski liels bonus, jo viņi uzskatīja, ka mēs tiešām viņam atbalstam, un tas priekš viņam tas ir liels, ļoti svarīgi. Tā kā, ja jūs domājat strādāt, tad attālināti, tas ir attālināti, bet tiešie kontakti ir jābrauc uz turieni un jāmēģina tur kaut kā to visu sarunas vest starp uzlidojumiem, jā, tas notiek, bet tā ir realitāte. Tā kā, ja kāds strādās ar būvmateriālu veikaliem, kas ir interesanti un kas nav Latvijā, tie ir tādi saucās promoteri. Tie ir cilvēki, konsultanti, kas atrodas veikalā, bet viņi nav veikala darbinieki. Mūsu izpratnē tas tā ir ļoti, ļoti jocīgi. Tie cilvēki strādā paši uz sevi, bet pārstāv kādu zīmolu. Un viņi pelna no tā zīmola, ko viņi pārdod kaut kādus procentus. Un līdz ar to viņi ir kā konsultanti, praktiski iekšā rāvēji. Teiksim, tā veikala iekšā rāvēji, kas mēģina pārdot to zīmolu, kam procents kas zīmols maksā viņiem procents. Līdz ar to, priekš mums tas ir pilnīgi kaut kā, pilnīgi nesaprotami, kā veikalā var strādāt neveikala darbinieki pie plauktiem būt. Viņi neatbild pa veikalu, pa plauktiem vispār, viņi atbild tikai, viņa mērķis ir pārdot tieši tā zīmola preces. Un ir jāierēķina tie cenas, tie procenti, ko jūs maksāsiet tiem cilvēkiem. Tas ir ļoti svarīgi, jo, ja jūs ierēķināsiet vienkārši uzcenojumu un nebūs promoteru, savu promoteru, bet blakus stāvēs no cita zīmola promoters, kas vienkārši pārķers tos klientus, kas ies pie jūsu plaukta, tad jūs vienkārši nepārdosiet. Tāda ir tā sistēma, tāda viņa pieredze. Tādas, ko es gribēju pateikt par pašiem Ukraiņiem tagad, salīdzinot ar kā viņi bija pirms kara un kā tagad, jā, viņiem ir augusi pašapziņa, žēl kaut tāda negatīva, var teikt, fona, cilvēkiem aug pašapziņa, bet augus ir pašapziņa un viņi ēpastus pat sāk sūtīt ukraiņu valodā. Un kļūst dusmīgi, kad es atbildu viņiem ne ukraiņu valodā. Viņi saka, kā jūs visa pasaule mūs atbalsta, kā jūs nezināt ukraiņu valodu. Ir tāda. Tā kā tas ir smieklīgi varbūt, bet, es domāju, ka ar apstākļos bez pašapziņas nav iespējams vienkārši cīnīties. Tam ir jābūt gatavi, ka viņi var vienkārši ukraiņu valodā jums rakstīt ēpastus un pilnīgi par to neuztraukties. Ka jūs nesapratīsiet, caur Google vienkārši translē, tulkosiet. Tādi ir novērojumi. Man bieži prasa, kā ir ar korupciju. Jā, tā nekur nav pazudusi. Es domāju, šī pat vasarā, karam sākoties, viņi bija samazinājusies, tagad viņi atkal atgriežas savā līmenī, tā ir viņa nacionālā īpatnība. Ir jābūt gataviem. Mēs kaut kādu 2 nedēļas atpakaļ pazaudējām vienu konkursu, jo mēs sapratām, ka tur bez privātās kaut kādas iniciatīvas, teiksim tā, mans biznesa ētika neatļauj maksāt vienkārši vēl kaut kam citam. Mēs vienkārši aizgājām prom no tā projekta. Liels konkurss, bet tā tas ir. Tā ir viņa īpatnība. Tie ir tādi, vēl, ko es jums varētu pateikt, ja tāda, neko jaunu noteikti, tā ir sadarbības partneri. Jābūt ir sadarbības partneri un darbiniekiem, kuriem tu tiešām uzticies. Un tas ir, var teikt, galvenais, kas tam visā ir jāiet. Mums ir sadarbības partneri jau no 16. gada, kuriem mēs tiešām uzticamies, un tā mēs praktiski visu laiku strādājam ar pēcapmaksām. Kaut arī šobrīd tas noteikti izsvēršu automa garantijas. Jo apgrozījums Ukrainā aug, kaut vai karš notiek. Šogad izskatās, ka mēs jau sasniegsim pirms kara laiku un strādāt ir iespējams. Transporta izdevumi, jā, šobrīd ir diezgan lieli, jo viss transports iet caur Poliju. Diezgan liels, daudz kilometri, bet savādāk preces neiet. Tā kā, apmēram īsi tā es varu pastāstīt vairāk. Es domāju, ja kāds tiešām kompānija vēlās, šis ir laiks. Pēc gada, pēc 2, tur būs konkurence tāda, ka jūs vienkārši netiksiet iekšā. Poļi, it sevišķi lietuvieši, poļi un vācieši ir gatavojās lielas investīcijas, būvēt savus veikalus un praktiski tad būs par vēlu.
Jā, Andri, paldies tev par šo pieredzes stāstu, arī par vēstījumu. Man liekas, ka mums bija iepriekšējais seminārs un arī šodienas seminārs. Es domāju, ka mēs turpināsim šos seminārus. Un, man liekas, visos mēs esam nonākuši pie tāda, gribas teikt, gala secinājuma un kopsaucēja, ka šī Ukrainas tirgus tā ir iespēja no vienas puses atbalstīt ukraiņus gan viņu ceļā uz uzvaru karā, gan pēc tam uz valsts un ekonomikas atjaunošanu, gan arī pelnīt Latvijas komersantiem. Jo tu diezgan precīzi pateici, ka ir valstis un ir valstu komersanti, kas dodas ļoti mērķiecīgi uz šo tirgu un tur strādā, un mums ir jāizmanto šī iespēja. Un mēs no savas puses arī esam tādās dažādos formātos runājuši arī ar iesaistītajām ministrijām, ka mums ir jādomā, kā stiprināt Latvijas uzņēmumu klātbūtne Ukrainā. Ja mums ir šie te valsts budžeta finansējums, no kā mēs šobrīd finansējam dažādas Ukrainas un Černihivas reģionu vajadzības, bet mums droši vien arī ir jādomā, kā mēs varam Ukrainā tiešām stiprināt Latvijas uzņēmumus Ukrainā, un lai viņi tur būtu. Es teikšu, jā, Andri.
Varbūt vēl pateikt, jā, mēs karam sākoties, mums bija darbinieks, mēs viņu evakuējām uz Latviju ar visu ģimeni. Viņš tagad strādā mūsu uzņēmumā joprojām, jā, un šo ziemu praktiski mēs bijām bez sava darbinieka. Aizbraucot uz turieni februārī, es sapratu, ka par šo laiku bez sava darbinieka mēs pazaudējām diezgan savu tirgus daļu. Tāpēc, kā es jau teicu, vācieši, poļi tajā laikā negulēja, kaut arī un ļoti spēcīgi mūs no tās mazumtirdzniecības ķēdes sāk spiest ārā. Šobrīd mēs esam pieņēmuši savu jaunu darbinieku, esam ar vairumtirgotāju, esam atjaunojuši viņu vairumtirgotāju komandu. Līdz ar to pa vasaru šo rudeni mēs mēģinam savu vietu atkarot tajā veikalu plauktos. Tāpēc es gribēju pateikt, ka tas darbinieks ir ļoti svarīgi, lai būtu tādā pusē, jums būtu lojāls darbinieks, kas tiešām seko līdzi, jo redzot, kā pusgada bez sava darbinieka, pat vairāk nekā pusgadu, mēs momentāli zaudējam savu ietekmi. Tā kā tur tiešām ir vajadzīgi darbinieki. Bez tā nekas nesanāk.
Jā, paldies, Andri. Paldies arī visiem dalībniekiem. Es atgādinu, ka šī webināra ierakstu nosūtīsim jums, arī visas prezentācijas, arī ieraksts un prezentācijas būs pieejami mūsu informācijas tīklos, un mēs nosūtīsim arī novērtējumu anketu, lūdzam to aizpildīt. Paldies par jūsu laiku, paldies par jūsu pacietību, un es vēlreiz atvainojos, ka mēs sākām nedaudz vēlāk, kā bijām plānojuši. Uz tikšanos nākamajos semināros. Visu labu!